How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Who's this behind you?
It's my daughter. It's Alexa.
How you doing? Oh, look at these
Yep.
two.
Both of them are in.
I know they're in for sure. So you're Brian Marquardt.
Yep.
Talk to you like I don't know you. You're married to my cousin Kelly for many years. You have two daughters.
Yep.
Lieutenant at the Berwyn Fire Department, correct?
Yes. I've
All
been a
right.
lieutenant for about 2 years now.
Wow. So I usually kind of go through the history of people going through what they've gone through, whatever the hell they're doing. But I don't know if I want to kind of jump into something different with you.
All right.
Because there's a lot of shit going on. And I think a lot of people don't know what's going on as far as, say, what you guys are going through, what the police are going through. Because really, for the most part, a lot of us that watch international news or national news usually just see hospitals and what they're going through.
Right.
They will see cops, for instance, kind of doing certain things. It also revolves a lot around New York. And unless you're from Chicago or near Chicago area, I'm from Florida, but for the most part, we see everything going on in New York.
Right.
So I kind of first want to I'm going to tell them where Berwyn is, which is basically a suburb right outside Chicago, western suburbs. There's only one that separates it, which is Cicero, which is where my family's from. But
Right.
you're really only about 5 miles, would you say, or outside Chicago?
Less than that. Less than that. We're basically Berwyn. I can tell you a little bit about Berwyn. Berwyn is basically a 3 square mile town, like 3.5 square mile town. We have in that 3.5 square miles, we have about 70,000 people.
Right.
So we run about which is a lot. The density of that well. Technically, hold on 1 second. Right.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right, let's go.
Berwyn is, so it's about 3.5 square miles. According to the 2010 census, we've got about 56,000 people there. But technically, it's more about 70,000 because we have a lot of undocumented people in Berwyn. And with the rise of population, we're figuring it's about 70,000 people, between 65 to 70,000 people, actual people in Berwyn. It makes it the most dense city in Illinois and about the 18th densest city population-wise, person per square foot-wise, in the nation.
Wow.
We go into a different room. I'll go upstairs.
I like it. That was the bird in the backdrop?
Yeah, I got
That's awesome.
I had a bird for 30 years.
Holy
He's a parrot.
cow. That's amazing.
So Berwyn is about, like I said, it's about 4.5 square feet or square miles.
Yeah.
Or 3.5 square miles with all that population in it. So it gets it's pretty dense. So we run about 8,000 calls a year, and we have an 80-man department. Full-time.
Are you bigger than Cicero?
No, Cicero's bigger, but we have, Cicero's bigger. They've got, but we're right in the same ballpark.
Gotcha.
So when we look at comparables, Cicero's comparable to Berwyn.
Now, I've asked you these questions before because you're so close to the city of Chicago. When there's emergencies, kind of like what we saw with 9/11, or whatever.
Yeah.
You guys, do you float inside of Cicero and then Chicago because you're so close? Because it's like people don't realize Berwyn is almost, even though it's a suburb outside Chicago, it looks very familiar to Chicago without the highway.
Right.
Transportation.
If you would turn Chicago into an actual square, Berwyn would be inside that square.
Sure.
Because there's parts of Chicago that are further west, and we're closer to the city than most of Chicago. Sure. The way that the Illinois works, their responses to major catastrophe. Well, by the way, so let me start off by saying I've got all my certifications. I've got a ton of certifications. I have a master's degree in public safety administration through Lewis University. Wow. I have a number of MIMS classes And NIMS is National Incident Management Systems. I've got a ton of those different classes and those different certs. So I kind of know how like these major catastrophes happen and how we're supposed to like escalate it and ramp up our responses because of it. So I've learned all that stuff. I'm very familiar in how it happens. Chicago, though, the way Chicago works is they work on their own because they're so big and they have so many departments. They like to incorporate themselves first and then have us do their backup stuff. Like the one time, and this was only recently, so like when they do like the Chicago Marathon or some big stuff like that,
Sure.
They'll call in other departments to help fill in like their paramedics. But they handle like all the fire stuff. They're able to handle all their fire stuff. But like when you need more EMS or more paramedics, which is, you know, when something big happens, you're going to need all these different ambulances. That's when they'll filter out through the city. And then there's a way that they call to act for mutual aid, it's called. And we have different MABUS divisions. And it all depends on where you lie and how close you are to the city. And that's who goes first. So...
That's unbelievable. How many years you been there?
I've been in Berwyn for 15 years complete. I'm in my 16th year.
Wow. How close are you from being chief over there? Or is that?
Well, I'm at a lieutenant level, and
yeah.
there's about, I'd say, 10 guys above me.
Gotcha.
That would be the chief.
Yeah, but out of that many people inside that unit, that's pretty unbelievable. And then I remember me talking to you about this too. You first start off as just a fireman, then you went into being a driver, if I'm not mistaken, and then you kind of worked your way up that way.
Yeah, that's like our department. I was lucky in the sense that when I got hired, I did not have to become a paramedic. Now, for the state, most people, when you get hired, you have to be a paramedic and you have to have like all your certifications to be complete to be a firefighter before you get hired onto a full-time union department. So the only town right now that I know of that's not like that if you want to be a full-time union department is Chicago. You can get hired with just, I believe, only a high school education.
Wow.
For Chicago. And then they'll put you through all the stuff. They'll make you an EMT and all that. They have all these different classes.
Yeah, and I don't even think a lot of people know a fireman's schedule, 24 on, 48 off, right? That's usually how it goes.
Yes, but in Chicago, if you're a paramedic, because they work there, it's absolutely nuts for those paramedics in Chicago. They work 24 on, 72 off. That's their schedule. Yeah. It's a little bit different right now. Yeah.
I remember my ex-brother-in-law, I think he ended up chief because he retired, but he was in it from 18 to 50 years old. I can't remember how long, in Orlando when it was like in its infancy. So there wasn't a lot here. Okay. They would even get called in for emergencies in California when there's a brush fire in other areas like that. Do they bother you guys with any of that stuff in Chicago? Because it's such a large city and we're kind of, Florida's Florida. You don't get involved with any of that?
The only time that we have it, there's all these special teams, for instance. In Chicago, like in our area, there's the way we work, like mutual aid outside of the city of Chicago. But like if, say, Berwyn has a catastrophe that happens, we have like a mutual aid. So we've got different towns around Berwyn that we call, and that's called a MABUS division. And Berwyn is located in MABUS Division 11. So we'll call like Cicero, Oak Park,
Forest Park, Riverside.
Yeah.
Something like that nature.
They're all the towns that are right there, like north of Riverside.
Yeah.
So we'll call them in first, and then if it gets bigger, we'll kind of go bigger and bigger and call in more departments and all that. So the only time where you have like where other towns or other states is something big, like when Katrina happened. Sure. So Louisiana needed all this help. So we were able to send down people, and we've got something called a TRT team. So after 9/11, Homeland Security developed these different teams, and they supported all this money to give to all these MABUS divisions on rescues, these different types of rescues. So I'm trained in like building collapse rescue, and I'm a part of the MABUS Division 11 TRT team.
Wow.
So whenever there's like a hurricane or something major that's happening, like say like an earthquake in California, and they need teams, they'll call out they'll ask for these special teams, and then we can respond to that. That's how we would do it.
It's almost military style, right?
Yes.
Yeah, very military.
Basically.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people, I remember discussing this with you years ago, I mean, long time ago, regarding, what you guys go through, because firemen are unbelievable, obviously, the police force, all that. I don't think sometimes we appreciate it until we see something like 9/11 on what you guys do, really. How important what you do, and really how it's not always the safest job, not only from a fire standpoint, but even going in certain neighborhoods. Hear the birds getting crazy?
Yeah.
Even going into certain neighborhoods, how that really could take a toll on you as well. I remember you even talking about maybe especially Chicago, some firemen having to wear like bulletproof vests because you're going in certain neighborhoods. They don't want you there, or there's a lot of crime there. There's a lot of gang activity. What you guys, not only are you there to fight a fire, go through a catastrophe, or help someone, you're looking out for your life. You never know what's going to happen to you on another level.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
It's a call by call basis. You just go, you kind of follow your training. We do a lot of training. But what's weird is we do a lot of training, but you're never fully trained to every single call, because it's like you could say, oh yeah, there's a fire in this room, so how are you going to get there? But every house is completely different. There's so many different variables to everything. So you just kind of try to relay on the basics of the stuff that you train on. You train on the basics, and you kind of have to be able to flow through everything and just able to, like roll with the punches is what you got to kind of do.
Sure.
But when you go on these different calls, like that stuff doesn't bother me so much as like, if I got to put on a bulletproof vest, because there's certain calls right now that we actually have bulletproof vests on every rig. And if it's a stabbing or a shooting, we're supposed to put these bulletproof vests on before we go to the call. To me, it's just another call. I'm okay with it. It's just the thing that's afterwards, and what's really big in the fire department and EMS scenarios are post-traumatic stress, PTSD. That's what's happening to a lot of firefighters, and unfortunately there's a rise in suicides now in the fire service because of it. Right. So we're trying to help we have all these different aids to help out. Like if you notice somebody's down and they need some help, and we're trying to get peer reviews and peer help, because when you go to a regular, like we've had psychologists come in and talk to us and tell us stuff, but they don't get some of the stuff that we see. They don't understand that, we went to a call where somebody was shot their child or something like that, and it's rough, right? So we got to go to like somebody who kind of understands it. So now there's a push to have these kind of psychologists that are familiar with what we see and come talk to them. And these peer reviews, which is just, firefighters that have taken classes that kind of understand, just so you could talk to somebody, So that's the big thing right now. And that's a huge change in Illinois. We've got a ton of help for that. And I think nationally they're doing a ton of help to try to help these firefighters with different things. Because now not only are you worried about PTSD, but then all the fallout that comes from that. Like, people could turn to alcohol and become alcoholics, or turn to drugs and start that drug use. And that could be a big spiral thing for them and their families. So there's a big push right now in the fire service to get help for firefighters because of all these crazy calls that we do see.
Yeah, I think a lot of us don't really realize all the stuff you go through on so many different levels, including police, obviously. And I always said about policemen and firemen, the one reason I could never do a job like that, and it's nothing against you guys, like you have to have a certain tolerance, but every time you get called in or you have to go do something, it's usually bad news.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a bad way. It's
Yeah.
usually, you know, like if I get up in the morning, I want to go do something, I'm excited to do it, or I get to go where I want to do, or even in my own
Right.
job, I'm not getting, it'd be like working somewhere and every time someone calling you the boss or somebody giving you bad news,
Right.
you're going somewhere because something is wrong, usually,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Usually it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and that takes a certain type of human being. My mom used to, and I do too, I used to call like firemen angels. And I grew up in an Italian household, as you know, with our
Right.
family. And we were kind of anti-cop growing up for a long time for some reason. I think just a lot of my family, just our environment. And then
Right.
as you get older, you start to realize, well, without them, who are you? Right? I'm
Right.
just saying. I
Right.
think a lot of young people don't really respect the police the way they should, and the fire department or the firemen. It's just, I don't know where we'd be without you guys. So
Yeah.
thank you for doing that. Honestly, I think I speak for a lot of people. So let's jump into this. So now that a pandemic has hit like this, I don't think anybody's ever, was ready for something like this. For one, how is the station handling that? Because it's not like you guys could be like, hey, we can't all get together, right? Are you guys all, I know you're
Yeah.
probably social distancing, but how's how's the office, your sleeping quarters, how you working together? How's that working?
So every morning when we get in, we take our temperature. So we check because one of the signs of it is a fever. We're told that if you feel sick to call in sick to work, not to come in.
Sure.
But after we take our temperature and we basically clean the firehouse top to down. We spray everything down, we clean it. And then after that, it's kind of like we're just normal. I mean, there's nothing you could do at that point because we're right on top of each other. It's not really meant to social distance because it's really going to our firehouse is like going to another home, right? It's like going back home because you sleep there. You're there for 24 hours with these same guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, like if you're just in the same room, like there's no real space to social distance at the firehouse. So we just take our precaution before we get in there. We do the temperatures, and then when we leave, we do the temperatures and make sure everybody is still in that range of not having a fever, not being sick. But all our calls now are completely different. It takes us forever to, like, if we have our dispatch ask a certain amount of questions, and if they fit that criteria, we got to go completely gowned up. We run calls completely different than what we did like a month ago.
Sure.
And it's kind of tough, that aspect of it. Like a normal call where a patient is just feeling, just has a fever and not feeling well.
Sure.
Now turns from before where we would walk them to the ambulance or put them in the ambulance, just take them to the hospital if they needed to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
That would probably take like half hour tops from the start of the call to the end of the call. Now the call like that takes an hour. Just a simple call like that takes an hour because you got to gowned up, you got to put everything on. Then they go and they take them. We get them to the hospital if they have any symptoms of COVID. So then they have to go to, there's certain criteria that got to be filled out. And then we got to decontaminate the whole ambulance, then spray it all down with bleach and clean everything up and get it ready for the next time. So it gets so now it's a lot longer. Just every call, it's a lot
riskier
longer.
too, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the reality, it's always like you didn't already have enough to deal with.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, right? And like the way we're running it is we're sending like one person full, there with a mask on, and they don't even go into the house. They see if they can have the person come out, and then they ask to see everything. And at once, like we determine, all right, the symptoms are like for the COVID-19 symptoms, then they have to back up. We fully gown them up and fully gowned up his partner, and then they work it. But then if it's like a heart attack, or somebody's having a heart attack or heart issues, can't breathe, and they need extra help, then the other crews, they have to gown up and do it. It's rough right now. It's getting rough.
That's a process. Has there been more? Are you guys busier than ever because people are at home more than ever, or is it slower than ever because nobody's eating in the restaurants or in the bars or any of that either? Because nothing's
It's
going on commercial wise. How is it?
yeah,
Balance.
it's kind of a toss up. It's weird because some days we're just as busy as we would normally be, but the calls are different. Like before we would get calls where people were just feeling a little ill. I think we've kind of stopped that because people don't want to go to the hospital now. When they're just feeling a little ill, they'll call their doctor, which is actually the right way to do it, instead of tying up the hospital beds. But then, like I said, now every serious call that we get is a lot longer. So it seems like we're just as busy or busier than we were a while ago. I haven't looked at the numbers lately to see where we were last year to this year, but I think we're right on par still.
Yeah.
At least it feels like we are.
I got you. I was hearing things, which this is kind of funny, but it isn't. So with everybody being kind of indoors more in Chicago, especially, and that being one of the highest crime rate areas in Chicago, you kind of work with police all the time.
Yeah.
And you're hearing crime is actually going down during this pandemic. Right. Do you see that happening in Berwyn, Cicero, Chicago? Because there's not as much people like gang activity or people on the streets, drinking in bars, fights, clubs, the clubs.
Yeah. Like we would go, like I'll go into work and in our area at like 10 o'clock in the morning, you'll have like domestic disturbances and people fighting because they're drinking and they're, we have to do evaluations where people are just wasted or on drugs and all that, and they're on the street passed out. Now we don't have those calls too much anymore because people aren't drinking on the streets like they used to be, right?
Right.
So they're not passed out on the streets.
Right.
So those calls have slowed down. So I could see that, like with the police activity, that's kind of slowed down. Also, the police, it depends on where you are and what they're told. They're not really pulling over too many people right now, unless you're doing something completely crazy, you're not getting pulled over. So
who wants to confront someone? Right.
So they're slowing down their activity, which ultimately, when you look at things, like, so say you pull somebody over and then you find out that they have a gun in the car or something like that, that escalates everything, and that's a different charge and all that. So that's why you're seeing that those activities are slowing down because of that. So it's kind of like, crime is going down, but is it going down because of the different kind of responses that the police are doing, or is it going down because people aren't on the streets? It's a toss-up. It's kind of hard to determine without really looking into the numbers to see, But I don't know. I wouldn't even know where you would get those numbers to actually look at the different types of arrests that they're making now versus what they were making, 2 months ago in Chicago and different towns.
Sure. Have you seen, I know this is kind of an off the wall question, but because a lot of businesses have been shut down, especially independent businesses, any arson kind of going on? Because if you own a business, you think it's going under, you torch it hypothetically, and no one's around to see you do it. Kind of hard to prove to a certain degree. Have you anything going on with that? So
far by us, it hasn't been anything that's crazy. So we haven't had any commercial fires happening lately. So I haven't been at work. I've been off for a couple of days now. I've taken a couple of days off for vacation. It just happened. We thought we were going to be able to do something, but because of this, we didn't. Right. So I haven't been around. And I haven't heard of any commercial fires lately or anything like that. So we're still getting our normal fires in the houses. Sure. By me, that's where 97% of all our fires are, we call them room and contents and personal. It's something catches on fire in somebody's room, that catches the house, and it goes from there. And for us, that's basically what we're still having. I haven't had really any commercial fires yet. But I also worked through 2008 and 9 when it was pretty bad too. And we had a lot of empty commercial buildings and didn't really have any fires there. So I don't see that happening too much. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but who knows, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when we think of Chicago and the fire department or whatever, we go to Backdraft, with Ron Howard's film and Kurt Russell with that Billy. Was it Kurt Russell? Billy Baldwin, that crowd when we think of Chicago,
Yeah.
even that's a little outdated, but anyways, that's kind of how we think of Chicago. But I think when we think of firefighters, we immediately think, I do a lot, New York, 9/11,
Right.
what they're going through.
Yeah.
This may have nothing to do with necessarily the fire department, but I think you may know what's going on with like the homeless. So I travel all over the country. San Francisco's massive, LA, New York, Chicago. What's going on? I have no idea. And I wanted to know if you did, like, what are they doing with all the poor homeless people? Are they bringing them indoors? Because
I
what's
don't
happening
know.
with that?
I don't know what they're doing. Say on our aspect, say they're sick and all that, and they happen to find someone, or they call 911 saying that, I can't breathe or anything. We'll go there and we'll treat them as a COVID patient, and we'll bring them to the hospital, so they'll still get the hospital care and all
Gotcha.
that. I don't know. I know a lot of those places, like they were shutting down a lot of those shelters because of the closeness and social distancing. So I'm not sure actually what's happening to them in like our town or in the surrounding towns. I really haven't heard too much about it. I just know that a lot of homeless people, when you go into a shelter, that's a bad situation, because it's
of course
one person has it, that whole shelter can end up having it soon. So I don't know. I really don't know what they're doing with that. It really hasn't even crossed my mind at this point.
Yeah, and I didn't know if a lot of homeless if there was a lot of looting going on or things in that nature in Chicago, because I'm in Florida, I don't see that.
Right.
Do you see any of that happening? Is that kind of
where I'm at? I haven't.
No?
I haven't seen much of that happening. And honestly, the streets have been kind of like empty to begin with. So
yeah,
I mean, with this stay home, like you drive down the streets, like during the day, you'll see people taking walks, and
sure,
it kind of looks like a normal, like a weekend day. But then at night, when we're doing a call at night, like normally when it's like, I was working when we had our first nice, almost 70-degree weather here in Chicago.
yeah,
And I was like, oh, this is going to be crazy. Because normally when that happens in spring,
it's crazy.
It's crazy. People are out drinking, they're fighting,
shootings, the whole thing.
Yeah,
that's when you see those numbers spike.
Yeah, we're getting a ton of calls. And that night was quiet as can be. So that's completely different. So I don't see I don't see the looting and all that. I haven't noticed that. And our call volume hasn't shown that, so.
Yeah. Do you think people have a different respect for you guys now, seeing what you're going through, what you guys go through from because I think sometimes we're all caught up in our own lives. We're all busy. We kind of take everything for granted. If there's a fire, just call them guys. If there's a shooting, call this guy. If there's this issue, call this person. But now they kind of see you really, I think this goes for nurses, doctors, firemen, police, like when you step back and still see that you have to go to work, how you have to protect yourself and protect others. Are people treating you differently, you think, too, respecting you differently?
Honestly, it seems to me people always treated the firefighters with respect. I've got a lot of police officer friends, and I joke around with them. Like when we drive around the streets, everybody's waving to us. Like everybody waves to us. And this is years ago, when I first started, that was one of the first things I noticed when I was a rookie, how many people just waved to us as we're driving down the street. And it was cool. And I would always make fun of my police officer friends, because I would say people wave at us while everybody's flipping you off and giving you the finger, you know? And so I think more people now are respecting some of the police officers because they're seeing what they're going through. Absolutely. And knowing that they have to work and they have to deal with these situations. We had a call not too long ago where we needed to call the police department into this house that we were in, and they have to come in there and with this pandemic going on, you don't want to touch anybody. You don't even want to be in a house, and they have to come in there, and then they have to almost arrest people because stuff was getting out of hand. So they're touching and they're grabbing. And to me, I was like, oh man, that's just horrible. I would not want to do that job right now. And I've always said it. I don't know how they could be police officer. I would not be able, I don't have the personality to be a police officer because I would fly off the handle with some of the way some of the people treat them. But I honestly think that people are seeing them in a different light right now through this situation. And I hope they are. And most of the time, like 99.9% of all police officers are good people, right?
Right. It's like anything else.
You do have your bad, and then that's what people focus in on are the bad police officers or bad, and that's what sucks for them is that they get a bad rap because of a few bad apples, but 90%, like the ones that I know they're family men. They help people out. They help their community out. They love their job they're doing, but it just people give them a bad rap because of it. But I honestly think that now with all this happening that I think people are treating them a little bit better because they're seeing the stuff that they have to go through.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And police and all the essential workers, like the nurses, especially the nurses, if you read some of the stuff that they're going through in New York, like what these nurses are going through in New York, the amount of mental damage that's happening, it's crazy.
It's got to be unbelievable.
It is. The numbers alone, like if you actually look at the numbers of people like in New York, how they have, the last time I checked, this was a couple days ago, so the numbers are outdated, but it's like 180,000 or something like that, like cases, versus like the next closest one at the time was like 6,000 or something. It's just crazy amount of problems that they're having over there in New York, and it's rough for them. Yeah. So hopefully, like, people are seeing what these nurses go through, and they're seeing that, like, all right, that's a job it's a great job, but it's really, really hard, and it's really mentally taxing on them. And hopefully they treat them a little bit better. I'm not sure that they treated them bad to begin with, but
sure,
I think they need all the help that they can get and all the support that they can get from people, for doctors too.
Yeah. When you seen the hammer coming down in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of like a mini New York, Chicago.
Yeah.
Were you thinking, were a lot of in your colleagues and everyone else, like, this is going to happen to us, like almost preparing for that? And how did Chicago New York's a lot bigger, busier. Right. And of course, Chicago's not New York, but you got to think, wow, if it's getting hammered to this level, if we get a quarter of that, we're going to get slammed, or even half that. Well, yeah. Were you guys preparing for that? And how come that hasn't happened to a certain degree? Because you were prepared, they're so similar, but they're not.
I think because of the way everything was going down in New York, that the governor, the Illinois, when they kind of shut down, they were like, in Illinois, we were one of the first states to do that, stay home, and
real fast.
That happened real fast. Like, they shut down it seems forever ago, but St. Patrick's Day was when they said there was no more schools, right? And our kids haven't been in school and all that since then. So they were ahead of the curve and a lot. So I really think that kind of curbed everything. But New York, like I said, so when I was talking about Berwyn, we were the 18th in the nation, most populated cities.
Yeah.
Above them is pretty much all the borough and all that area in New York. So they've got so many people in such a small area. Like, the square footage, it's so congested. So that's so easy for them to get
absolutely
this disease, this virus. And it's scary. So that's one thing that hurt them the worst, is because so many people can get it so quickly, where we're kind of more spread out. We're not as dense as they are. And I think the powers that be, like the governor, took action quickly. So that does help, I think that's kind of what slowed it down. So when it first started happening, you were reading this, I was reading these stories out of New York. I'm like, man, this is coming. This is not going to be good. But at the same time, they were taking steps and actions over here to slow everything down, because when we read, I was reading about the art, like Firewise. I was reading about what happened um, in Washington, and how they
Washington State.
Yeah, Washington State. We found the first victim and stuff, and they had to take basically, because they didn't know at the time, they took a whole shift of this department and put them on self quarantine. So it's like, if for a department like us, if we take like if we had a self quarantine and we didn't know what they were doing, that we would be running way low on men. Instant,
for sure.
So we got lucky because it really didn't affect us until, like a couple weeks later. That's when stuff started hitting the fan. But we were sort of trying to get prepared. We already saw what was happening, and then they kind of try to figure it out and brought it to us, and like started trying to flatten that curve a little bit, So we were kind of prepared. I wouldn't say we were 100% prepared, but we were trying to get prepared as all this stuff was happening. And my chief and my assistant chief did a great job of looking at the data and trying to figure everything out, and they're following the CDC guidelines right off the bat, and they're not ignoring them. Like, there were some places that were completely ignoring what the CDC is saying, and like, I don't know, like different states like Georgia, and there's the other states that haven't shut down or haven't done anything yet, and they're just ignoring what the CDC is saying. That's like, those areas, that's what's scary.
Right.
That, all in all, when we saw stuff happening, that's pretty much that when everything starting locking down, we were starting to get prepared for it. So it didn't take us by surprise, I would say.
Yeah. I spent so much time in New York, and I always said that, even just in Chicago having, we have, how would that jump out of my head? The, what's behind the buildings? I'm losing my mind here. Alleys. I'm so sorry. In New York, they don't have even alleys. Right. So we are fortunate enough to spread that out, which is huge. Our streets are wider. Yeah. And the garbage, for instance, to have the alleys to be able to put the garbage, for instance, just in the garbage bins or whatever, not have it on the front of the street. All those type of things, it's a huge difference because it just is so congested there. I don't care what you do or where you go, there's people. Or Chicago, you can get that break. You know what I mean? Right. You do have that distance. There's something else I wanted to ask, and I don't want to forget about it. So you, being a fireman, you are not allowed, or are you allowed to carry a firearm to protect yourself? I've always wondered that. You're not allowed to.
We're not sworn off. We don't have that. We're not like sworn officers to carry the weapon, like police officers, how they're trained. We can't. So we don't carry a firearm at all. Really? Which, honestly, I don't want to carry a firearm because if there's like, say we have a stabbing call or a shooting call, right? The police officers, we go and we stage. We wait until the police officers clear the scene. And that's how I rather have it. I'd rather have the police officers clear the scene, let them think about what they have to do, and then we'll think about what we have to do. Kind of separate our jobs. Because if we're going in there, with a weapon and we have to clear our own scene and then take care of a patient, I think it's kind of too much for one department to do. I like the way it's kind of separated. We'll have the police officers come clear the scene, and then we'll come in there. But police officers also have, like, there's different SWAT teams and stuff where they have like these medics that are trained with weapons and offer special SWAT teams to do, like, that handles like the public shootings and all that, or like school shootings, because all departments right now, or at least the departments I'm working with, or I've seen do it in my department in general, we're doing these different shooter scenarios where we were before all this started happening, and like learning how to do it. And we're working with our police department and we're trying to figure out how exactly is the best way to take care of A, the victims, and B, make sure that we're safe as we're doing these different scenarios. And it's kind of broken down the way I said it, where the police officers are there and they're clearing the scene, and clearing the levels for us to go and take care of the victims. You know,
Gotcha.
so that's the way I'd rather have it. I'd rather not have a gun on me and then worry about that
Sure.
aspect. Let me just deal with the victim and the patient and let other people deal with the violence part. So
Yeah, I mean, you guys too, you love your job. Let's face it. I think there's, if there's people that when they, a lot of people say, I love my job, I love what I do. For you to do what you do, you got to love
yeah,
what you do. Legit. I mean, like 100%.
and I do. And I tell my wife, I tell everybody I've got the best job in the world.
Right.
Like I really do love my job.
Did that start from, so I'm going to go back now because remember I told you I kind of start from the beginning when they're younger and kind of move up. But
Okay.
in your case, were you one of those kids, because we all had friends, I wasn't one of these kids, but friends that some wanted to be a cop, some wanted to be a fireman. Did you grow up in that environment of other family members being involved with it? Or was it, I know the answer, but
Yeah.
I know your past, but as far as independently just saying, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
No, I did not know I wanted to be a firefighter for growing up. I was in college. I wanted to become an attorney.
Mm.
I was at school. My best friend became a firefighter while he was in school. So he
Mm-hmm.
was studying to become an attorney also. And then he got a job as a firefighter. So I saw the job, and then I got to meet some of the guys. I'm like, man, this is great. Like, I really like what you're doing. So after that aspect, I was working for a law firm downtown. I didn't become an attorney. I didn't go to law school yet. I was in the process of applying, and I just needed a break from college. But then I started taking these fire tests also because I saw the job and I really liked it. So then I got on the list and I got hired, and the rest is history. It was actually pretty cool. Like I did not plan on being a firefighter, and I ended up becoming one, and I can't. I mean, it's so fun. I love my job. I truly do. I'm so happy and blessed that I have this job, and it's completely different now. Nowadays, you almost have to know that you want to be a firefighter in high school to become a firefighter, because you got to take all these classes. You got to become a paramedic. You got to do all this. Where when I got lucky, when I got hired, I didn't have to take all that. I just used my college degree, and that's all I needed to get my job.
Yeah, my cousin Jimmy Barker in Arizona, is he in Scottsdale? Or I don't know where part, I can't remember. He moved, but I told you, he had his own successful business, to grooming. I think he does animals, the pets and stuff. I think he has 1 or 2 shops, and then his dream was to be a fireman for a long time. He waited 10 years, and then he went and did it. They called him in finally, and he was so excited. And I'm thinking, you're already a successful businessman. You don't got to even do this. But he feels like it's his calling to do that.
Yeah.
And then when I was growing up in Florida, even starting at a young age, what I found quite interesting is how each fireman, you guys are like a team, you guys all do everything together when you're together, and then it kind of separates it. I kind of missed that playing sports my whole life, or, that camaraderie. Is that the word?
Yeah.
But one thing was I realized, because I'd work out with a lot of gym rats, and a lot of guys that seemed like that were in the military would come out, go into the fire department, and then they would also be trainers, or they would come out, and some firemen would be, say, a fireman and then bartend on weekends.
Right.
Everybody kind of, because you do the 1 on 2 off, it's a different type of lifestyle where you have some freedom to do other things.
Right.
But each one of you guys lives such a different life. It's not like everyone always thinks like, hey, I'm a fireman. I go work, I come home to the family, and I just sit and wait. Then, you know what I mean? It's
right. Yeah. Everybody does something else. My friend that got me into the fire department, and I saw he's an attorney now. But
right.
So but he's also a firefighter. So he works as a firefighter, and then he's an attorney on his days off. Then I've got other friends that do construction. A lot of firefighters do construction. There's different ones. There's accountants. There's so many different aspects, and then they do this because of the way it works out. The 24 on and 48 off. You could do other things.
Sure.
As a full-time firefighter, and it's cool. It's cool to do.
Yeah, and like I said,
I like time with my family. It's nice. Like, I'm blessed. I get to, like other fathers, and they don't get to spend all the time. Like, they don't get to see different things as their kids are growing up. But so in the summertime, I've got one day on, and then I get to spend the 48 hours with them. You know, we play games, do all different things. So I think it's at this point, while they're still young and they still want me around, they're not teenagers yet. So I think in about 5-10 years, I might change where they're not going to want me around. But right now, I'm soaking it all up, and I'm soaking it all in all this time that I'm with them.
Yeah,
it's
that's wonderful.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think leaving that would be hard, because I've worked in environments where you work, you know, with a bunch of people, and then say you're leaving, you're either quitting or who knows what's happening. But it's hard to leave, I'm sure, someone like you, because it's almost military. You guys eat, sleep, drink together.
Yeah.
You go to the games together. You know, they're your second family. It's more than just having a job where a lot of us only work 8 hours, maybe in an office, or maybe just see people here or there, and we're kind of closed in the world, computers, and it's a different type. You guys aren't like that. You're still almost old school, right? You all, it's not like you're all walking around with headphones, ignoring, like sitting on a computer. You're all alert.
No.
You all talk. You all, you know, it's got to be unbelievable, because it's hard.
The best thing that we've got is the kitchen table. The kitchen table is the best spot for training, best spot for everything. You learn story, like everybody sits around. We're telling stories. We're joking around. We're talking about the day. We get to know each other. Nobody's really on their phone. We got a rule, like in the mornings, you can't be on your phone, right? Like we're talking, we're discussing what meals we're going to make for that day and all that, because we're there for the 24 hours. So everybody has to throw in money, your own money for your meals. A lot of people think that the city pays for our meals or anything, but they don't. We throw in our own money, and it depends on where you work. In Berwyn, we throw in $20 a guy, and we eat pretty much like kings because of it, right? Like we'll make whatever meal we have. We have a kitty saved up. But that time when you're around the kitchen table at our meals and stuff and having, you know, that's the best time. Like we're all joking around. Absolutely. It's like going back to high school. like your high school lunch table, where how you would always joke around with your friends and stuff.
Yeah, it's the 80s.
Right. It was fun. It was great. That's the best time. That, to me, like, that's where we build all our camaraderie, and like we go through so much stuff together, but we let off all our steam at that kitchen table. Like we just joke around and we don't take ourselves too serious when we're sitting around there, you know? To me, that's the best part about the job.
Yeah, and you guys have, like the military, you all depend on one another as a unit, a team. You're all looking out for one another. I mean, how many people actually have that type of job except the military, right? So I've always looked at the military, and almost an extension of the military was always kind of like the firemen, again, to me. Police are kind of independent. They're in the cars. They're doing different things, right? More independent driven. You guys do... Again, you're all in the, your headquarters together. And then when you hit the streets, you're together, right? It's almost like going into battle. Yeah. I've always found that very fascinating, because that's got to be a really, to keep doing that throughout your life and have that relationship with friends, colleagues, it's on another level than just the rest of us.
I love it. I think it's really cool.
All right, I'm going to ask you one more question. I just want to leave, and this is kind of open-ended, and I know it's a hard. What do you think the future is now, not only for, say, the fire department? Are they going to start changing, you think, a lot of the ways things are being done? And also, like, if this happens again, are they going to handle things differently? Maybe not just from city to city, state to state, but more on like the United States, we're all going to have to start doing this instead of, like we were saying, some are quarantined, some aren't. Some can do this, some can't.
It's hard to say, but like I think unless we find like a cure or like even just like we'll take the flu shot, we'll put this part of the flu shot until we find something that's going to help us and stop the spread of this stuff. It's good, at least for the near future. Things are going to change. All our calls are going to be just how we set up. We're going to have to, everybody's going to have to wear a mask. We're going to be walking around, and then when you listen to the CDC and the different people, they're saying that handshakes, like no more handshakes. Handshakes should be stopped. Like, so it might change the way we do everything in our life. Who
Absolutely.
knows, right? We don't know what the future holds, but from what I'm seeing, and I don't think this is going to stop until for a while. Our responses, especially the way we respond to things, I don't think is going to stop for a long time. So we're going to have, so that aspect has definitely changed. Like the getting the call for the 90-year-old lady who fell. Now, before it was like, all right, we'll go over there, we'll make sure she's okay, we'll pick her up, we'll put her back in her bed, is now changed to, all right, we got to wear our mask, we got to make sure that she doesn't have a fever. If she has a fever, we might have to take her to the hospital, even if she doesn't want to go. And it's going to be tough. It's definitely going to change the different aspects of how we do things.
Sure.
Hopefully everything, once they find like a quote unquote cure, or like they give you the shot and a vaccination for this, then we'll get back to what we had before. But until then, I don't think that that's going to happen. I think we're going to still have to take it slow. And because if they say, like, if they lift up this band, and you go back to, and all these kids go back to school, that could spread again. And then what are you going to do? You're going to have to put this band back on.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at like China, I know it's tough when you look at China because they're not really saying much and they're kind of being quiet. They said they kind of lifted up their band, but then they placed it back on because more people were getting it again. So I don't know how it's going to, like, how we're going to end this, but it's going to be a slow end, and hopefully we have a vaccine come soon. And once everybody gets this vaccine, then maybe we can start lifting up these, like, a complete ban, but it's going to be a slow raise. Like, you can't just all of a sudden stop doing, all of a sudden, like, all right, shelter in place is over, everybody can go on with your normal lives. I don't think that's going to happen, because I think you're going to have a spike back up again. We're trying to flatten that curve and get it on a downward tilt. But if we release everything and say, all right, go back to your normal lives, I think that it's going to go skyrocketing back up again. So I don't know how we're going to change from this, or get back to normal, or when we're going to get back to normal. But I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. I think it's going to take at least a year until we get that vaccine. I think after that vaccine, that's when you're going to see it start getting back to normal. But until we have a vaccine, I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, that is scary. Especially, we all have elderly parents, grandparents, and kids and everything, and it is what it is.
Yeah, it's not good.
No, not at all. But thank you so much for taking time to do this, my man.
No problem. Happy Easter to you.
Yeah, happy Easter to you and your family. And you went and saw Mitz yesterday, our grandmother.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, we saw her.
Great.
It was kind of weird. We're doing our social distancing. We had her back and behind the door, and we're just talking to her there. It was cool to see her. I saw your mother there.
Yeah.
I was talking to her for a little bit. She's doing well. And I mean, it's just rough on the family, I feel bad.
It's a crazy time. Yeah. Especially your family and all that, and how close you guys are, especially around the holidays and stuff like that. Like how you love there's so many people in that family, and how they all gather like that, and not having that, it's rough. It's got to be rough for them. I think our immediate family's probably up to 60 or 70 now, and I think me and Kelly, it's like we have 170 cousins. I think that doesn't include Italy. If you start, it's that massive. My grandmother, I don't know if you know this, when she turned 80 in 1988 or 89 or 90, she had 80 grandchildren then. My cousin Marisa walked in with her 80th then. So at this point, I don't even know how many, we got to be one of the biggest families in Illinois, I would think.
It's got to be. It's so huge. And when you guys have parties and there's so many,
we just did the cruise, all of us, talking about the cruise.
Yeah.
And only like half of us showed. I think there was almost 50 people. So I'm like, if this is 45, 50 people, there's only half of them here. What the hell?
Right. Right?
That's immediate family. I'm thinking
It's
this is immediate family. This isn't.
Right.
We would take
It's
the
not
whole
like
boat
third
over.
It's not even like third cousin. It's first cousins that you guys got that many. It's crazy.
And I'm the oldest out of all them. That group.
Wow.
So,
well, look at you.
I'm the old dog, my friend. I'm me and
there you
Mitzi.
are.
Me and Mitzi are only like 33 years apart, believe it or not. My grandmother. That's
Really?
pretty, right? Yeah, my mother and
wow.
my mother's only 18, and then my grandmother's 33.
Wow.
I've been with her a long time. They used to think
You have.
Mitzi was my grandmother was my mother, and my mother was my sister growing up.
There you go.
There you go. All right, my man. Thank you for
All right.
everything you do.
All right. Enjoy.
All right, brother. Take care.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.